Hey folks, welcome to this week's Spreading the Baseball News with Larry. Hope everyone is well. So the interesting question is what's going to happen with the baseball season this year. There is some talk about resuming the season in July, and I'll give you my comments about it in a second, but I thought I'd also mention the overall player situation, the overall situation with players and their contracts in American baseball. Baseball players are governed by a contract. There's a contract between the Major League Baseball Players Association and Major League Baseball. And that overall contract, known as a collective bargaining agreement, sets many factors. It includes what minimum salaries are for players, what type of compensation or reimbursement they get for day-to-day expenses. And it governs the area particularly of when players can become what are known as free agents. When a player first makes it to the major leagues, they have essentially no bargaining power with the team. When I say no bargaining power over their compensation. And basically they are compensated whatever within the parameters of that minimum, but whatever the team offers to them. Now obviously there is some discussion between the player and the team, but they are, again, the player has limited leverage. After, I think it's 3 years of service in the majors, the situation changes a little bit. And that is that the player and the team on their contract or on their salary is subject to arbitration. So at the end of the year, when the team and the player are discussing their compensation for the next year, if they don't reach an agreement, then the player submits their demand or their request, the team submits the team's request, and it goes to arbitration. Not mediation, but arbitration, so that the arbitrator hears what the player wants, hears what the team is willing to pay them, and then selects one of the two. They don't encourage a compromise. Now, during this arbitration process, or before the arbitrator agrees, or rather makes their decision, I should say, there could be ongoing negotiations. Right? Players that are in this arbitration process, I think it's another 3 years, have somewhat more leverage. At the end of this period of time, after I believe it's 6 years of service, then the player has much more leverage. And at that point, the player can seek what is known or become a free agent, which means that they are eligible to sign with any team, and they can get the highest salary that any team is willing to offer. An example, Garrett Cole this past year signed with the Yankees, and you saw earlier players will sign for whatever the team is willing to offer them. Now, teams that have players that are in their last year of when they're eligible simply for arbitration, and if they think they cannot sign that player going forward, they don't want to lose that player for nothing, so they will often trade that player. As an example, the Red Sox this past year made the determination that they would not be able to sign Mookie Betts, so that they traded him to the Dodgers for prospects, so that they get something in return, and hopefully these young players who are still in the minor leagues will develop into quality, into good players. And again, this free agency is what allows for, after a number of years, for the and particularly for star players, for their compensation to increase quite a bit. So that's a little bit of the arbitration or the overall collective bargaining agreement. In any case, this past March, when the season was suspended, the Major League Players Association met with Major League Baseball to work to discuss the framework of what would happen if the season were to resume at some point. And there was an understanding that the players' compensations, and all of them are governed by contracts, that their compensation would be on a prorated basis. So if the regular season, which is normally 162 games, if the teams played 81 games, then the players would receive half of their agreed upon salary. And there was an understanding between Major League Baseball and the Major League Players Association. So look forward to seeing you next week. 谢谢大家收看。如果你们有什么看法，请你留言。下个星期见。